Well, what are the 4 C's of investing and why should you pay attention? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thanks so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, if you got a question, I would love to hear from you today. Just go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. Once you do get to the site, just go up to the very top. There's a link that says Ask Bob. You can send it on in, and we'll get you taken care of. And whatever that question might be. And if you, or maybe you just have a comment, we'd love to hear from that as well. That is an open line of communication. So I want to always be available for my listeners. So just prudentmoney.com, and you can let the the email center, just kind of take it away from there. Now, if you haven't signed up for the Prudent Money e-letter list, you got to sign up for that. Every time we roll something out, we'll let you know. It comes to your inbox, and promise not to do too much of that, but that way you know if something that you might want to consider reading or listening to. And also at the website, you'll find the podcast. Our podcast is posted there, but our podcast is posted on any platform that you like to consume podcasts. And so anyone that you use will more than likely be on it. Just search Prudent Money. So a lot of ways to get information. I think it's very, very important to make sure that you are spending some time, whether it's daily, weekly, or whatever, thinking about, praying about, reading about stewardship and money. And all of the time that you put into it today will pay benefits. I just know it does in the future. It makes handling at money a lot easier because you know more and you've picked up a good education. I was talking to somebody yesterday a client that is they're in their early 70s and just really read and study money and how it works, and as well as how stewardship ties into all that. I think it's a great use of time and has payoff. So that's all at the website, and we will keep you posted. Now let's talk a little bit about. We always seem to start out with the Middle East. Not much happening, very quiet. I described it yesterday as the calm before the storm, I do believe, because you read these articles, you read what's coming out of the White House, you read what's coming out of Iran, and the only conclusion that you can possibly come up with, I think, is that, boy, things are certainly seeming to start boiling up, and they're going to come to the surface at some point. And hope that that's not. There's different case scenarios that it could end up happening because of it. We'll have to see. We'll just have to keep an eye on it. I think for you today, we'll answer the question, and we'll talk a little bit about this today as well. How much risk are you taking, and are you okay with it? And that's very important. I was talking to somebody the other day about making a financial decision. And the advice from me was either do it or don't do it. My place in the discussion was not, I'm just giving you options and telling you could do this or you could do that. I'm not telling you what to do. And what I'm encouraging you to do is to seek out God's peace. And as we talked, she talked a lot about that she did not have God's peace. And I think that is just a signal to you that says, hey, understand the pro and the con of each decision and each option, and pray about it, and do not make a move until you get God's peace. That's very, very, very important. I think in any of these big decisions that I'll talk about working with my clients, that it's important they make that decision on their own, not to have someone make it for them. But at the same time, you make those decisions by first obtaining all the information of the various options that you have, whittling those options down to hopefully just a couple, and this in this particular situation, it was to do something or not to do something, and find God's peace somewhere wrapped up in that answer. And there you'll have it. And you own that decision. And and it may be, you may be feeling like, well, I know I need to go forward, and I feel like I've got God's peace. I'm sad about it, and just kind of investigate those emotions, and investigate. A lot of times, fear will interfere with things. It'll be a situation where you're trying to make a decision, where God's peace is sending you, but boy, you also have a lot of fear as well. Got to clear that out of the way. Learn what that's, try to understand where that's coming from, which is something too that I think that an advisor can help you, that's attuned to that type of thing, can help you walk through that fear. And most of the time we'll see that it's there. We can get rid of it and go forward. Well, today is one of those days where we attempt to fulfill our mission to further our understanding of how investments work. And when I say, obviously we do that on a day-to-day basis, but there's some days that we are very intentional about driving home this information is so extremely important for you to know. This is, I think there's a difference between commentary and full on, this is what you need to learn. We talk about improve your today, better your financial tomorrow. That's what that's the vision of what I guess you call it the mission statement of what we try to achieve with the radio show and the writings and everything that we do. So, once again, it's improve your today, better your financial tomorrow. As we learn today, we improve our future. That's the bottom line. Every day is that accumulative growth of our knowledge of how things work when it comes to investing. And I'm a big believer in this, is that if you put the time in to educate yourself, and there's a lot, that's the thing. There is more great information out in podcasts and you name it on YouTube than we can ever have the time to go through. So the resources are there. It's the desire that's got to be there to push you towards those resources. And I know we put a lot out, and then there's just people, that's all they do is put out content. And good content, there's good and bad content, but I think you know the difference. So let's talk a little bit about a question that came up. Dear Bob, I appreciate the education on money that you teach. I was wondering if there was just a few things that we could focus on that would dramatically help our understanding of the complicated world of investments. And love that question. And this is why I bring up the questions all the time, to go to the website at prudentmoney.com, because I see these questions and I go, boy, this is something that this listener really could get value from by listening. And let's address this, because I always have my theory is that if one person sends in an email about something, there's thousands of other people who have the same question. So let's talk a little bit about that. Money is a necessary evil. We all need it because it is the currency that puts the roof over our head, the food on our table. It's important, of course, in that regard. From a Christianity perspective, we have to be careful. And I talk a lot about Matthew 6:24, where Christ really just calls it out the way it is. You will be tempted to either make the God of money with the little g, on the throne of your life versus the real God with the big G. That's the way I like to put it. And I think it is the stewardship verse of the Bible. And we're called to be good stewards. So we have to live with this toxic thing called money, and keep that within God's financial will for our lives. It's not an easy task, and I do believe that we all have God has a financial will for us, being such an important, dominant figure of influence in our lives. And it's very, 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 very simple to slip off of the road of influence and follow the wrong thing. But I thought a lot about this, and when I like to come up with things that are memorable, and so I came up with the 5 C's of investment clarity. And I looked at it, this is perfect. This is exactly what I think if you understood, you'd be good. I looked at it and I said, well, there's really 4. 5 sounds so much better, so we'll mention the 4th one, but I don't have a whole lot on it. And we'll go forward from there. But the 5 C's of investment clarity, and clarity is that point we get to where things start to make sense. I have in 32, actually more than that, 34 years of working in the financial services business and being an advisor. I've had my share of many moments where I've explained something and people look at me like, what in the world are you talking about? So it is something that I think all advisors really strive to do, is to talk in a language that makes sense. We tend not to do that. And I would suggest from our standpoint, it's one of the more difficult aspects of what we do, is because it's real simple if you put a couple advisors together in a room and they talked of what's going on in the markets, you would walk out and go, are they speaking another language? Because it's just easy to speak in lingo. I had a guy that represents an investment company that we use, and he was in the office yesterday, and we were talking. I was thinking, if someone just walked in and listened to what we were talking about, they'd probably think we lost our minds. But it is a totally different language if you let it be. But if you make it relatable, I think that it really serves its purpose. So I'm going to give you 5 C's of investment clarity, and yet there's really 4 that are super important for you to understand. But before I get started, I think it probably makes sense to go ahead and just take a break and come back, because I don't want to start this and then have to restart it on the other side. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Hey, make sure you're signed up for the Prudent Money e-letter list. It's at prudentmoney.com. We are up against a break. Stick around, and I'll be right back. Hello, this is Bob Brooks. Proverbs 22:3 and Proverbs 27:12 are the exact same verse word for word. I call them the stewardship verses of risk. A prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. On the Prudent Money Radio Show, we teach about risk, how to identify it, how to figure it out, and what to do about it. We believe that to be a prudent steward, you have to be a good risk manager. Listen to the Prudent Money Radio Show on Bible School Radio 91.3. Prudent Money, home of the modern-day steward movement.
Dynamic, practical, life-changing.
There's no point in going to church and not letting the Christ who gave birth to the church on the day of Pentecost change your life.
Join us each day as Pastor Paul Shepherd applies the timeless truth of Scripture to everyday life. It's Destined for Victory on this great station.
Weekday afternoons at 3:30 here on Bible School Radio, KDKR.
This is Rob Randall, your host and teacher of the Invisible War radio program. The Invisible War is the study of God's Word on how to walk in Christ's victory in the spiritual battles we face against the powers of darkness. Join me every Sunday morning at 9 right here on KDKR and KYJC in Commerce, your station for life.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Listen, if you got a question for me, you know the drill. We talk about it all the time. Go to the website, prudentmoney.com. Go to the top of the web page, and there is a Ask Bob section. Just click through, and you will be there, and you can send the question in. We're talking about one of those questions right now, and actually probably would make sense, wouldn't it, to reread the question. I appreciate the education on money that you teach. I was wondering if there were just a few things that we could focus in on that would dramatically help our understanding of such a complicated subject. So let's talk a little bit about the 5 C's of investment clarity. And we'll make this very, very relatable. The first one is diversification. This is a word that, of course, most people know what it means. It's simply taking, if you have 100% of your money sitting in an account, you want to properly diversify that money into different types of investments so that you are properly diversified. That you have the whole idea is to spread your money out amongst different types of investments. Now, that's pretty much out of a definition out of a pop culture finance book on money. Let me take it down a couple levels. What it is not is, and this is where I think so many investment advisors, make a misinterpretation of diversification. And I can always illustrate it with this one example, because I think it's the best one I've got. I had a guy come into my office one time, and we were talking about his situation. And so we're in the conference room. He goes, "Hey, I want you to take a look at my 401k plan. I'm so well diversified. I thought you'd be happy to see this. I have the money spread over 10 different types of funds." So I took a look at it, and there was 10 different types of funds. But the problem is that, and it was spread out over those 10 different types of funds, is that all of those funds were stock-based funds. And the problem is they'll all move at the same time. So if the market were to go down, chances are those 10 stock funds will go down with the market. So if we go through a bear market, for instance, which is a very, very bad negative market that can last for up to a year, 2 years, maybe even 3 years, and investors tend to lose a lot of money. And that is what you're wanting to avoid, which we'll get down into the 4 C's, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But diversification is spreading the money over different types of investments. Yes, it's true, that do different things. Typically, and it's not always the case because things can change, but typically bonds and stocks don't go in the same direction. If stocks are going up, bonds may not be going down, but they're not going up very much. If stocks go down, then you look to bonds, that can be a little bit more diversification and protection from a very, very big loss. That's not always the case, that bonds react differently. I mean, today, very unpredictable the way bonds are going right now. They're doing pretty good. Is it the rebound we've all been looking for? I can't answer that. I don't think it is. But if you were invested to where you had a good diversification between the two types of investments, which would be stocks and bonds, you could add a third in there. You could add gold or silver as a commodity type of investment. You could add something in there called inverse funds, which you'd want somebody to professionally manage for you. But that's also something that would add or potentially adds diversification. When I say adds or will do or won't do, it depends on the situation. Nothing's guaranteed, and you know that, but I won't say it anyway. So you're probably wondering what C does that fall out of? Probably the most important word out of the 5 C's, which is correlation. And I know that sounds like a foreign word, but correlation is very simple. You want to see in your investments how correlated your investments are to the stock market. So if you're really concerned about risk, you don't want your investments to go the same direction as all the other investments, and to where you have really very, very little diversification. You want to see non-correlated investments. So, for instance, you want to, if stocks are going down, you might have your money in the other investments where they're in bonds or short-term bonds or whatever you come up with, and that goes up while the stocks go down, and takes away some of the loss, and adds a little bit of protection to the. And you could go as far as, like I mentioned a second ago, inverse funds, and what that would mean to your portfolio. So, in my opinion, today I would not be sitting there with a highly correlated portfolio, meaning that your investments are very correlated, meaning they're going to move up and down with the market versus going to move opposite of the market or close to that, or and provide you some protection that way. Hope that makes sense. I'll probably write something on this and send it out. So diversification, but the first C is correlation. How correlated are your investments to the stock market? I mean, that is the question. If you're wanting to take crazy risk, a whole lot of risk, looking for long-term growth, don't care about how much risk you're taking, then you want something that's highly correlated with the stock market. I love that word correlation, and unfortunately, it's really never hardly used. Consistency is the next one. Consistency is also an important one, because the question you're asking with consistency, has this mutual fund that I picked out, and of course the majority of 401k plans are based or selection of mutual funds or variable accounts or whatever you want to call it, but mostly mutual funds. And so you're wanting to see, has this fund been consistent in all types of markets? And by the way, this is one of these I think these words that we're talking about, the 4 C's, 5 C's of investment clarity. These are things that to familiarize yourself with, and to be in a situation where you have a good understanding of what it means. Obviously, I think that you need a financial advisor there to help you with this. But you don't want to see, from a consistency standpoint, a money manager who manages a mutual fund. You don't want to see that person who show a bunch of inconsistency. You want to see the same. Sometimes they said, I've heard mutual fund managers say, "Yeah, this is a very boring investment style." But boring is good. Boring keeps you out of trouble. And so you're wanting to see, how they've handled money in a bear market, how they've handled money into a bull market. If you get this ability to see this, unfortunately, there's many funds that have not been around long enough to really get a good idea of consistency. But especially if you have a mutual fund that you're using in a 401k plan that is marketed as being very conservative, not a lot of volatility, big ups and downs and that kind of thing. One that you can, for lack of a better way to say it, sleep good at night fund. And it's doing crazy things this year. That's not consistent. What you're wanting to see is a consistency, and you can call your financial advisor and say, well, why isn't this performing consistently? Obviously, you're going to have ups and downs with any fund, but if you see unusual behavior for that particular fund, you'll want to know why. It may be an issue of consistency. It may be just an issue out of your control that has nothing to do with it. Then number 4 is the cycles, and the cycles is something that I think everybody should have a really good idea of how that works, because for most people who invest into the stock market, they're taught by pop culture finance that the market always just goes up. Well, to a degree over time, that's true. I mean, any chart will show you that, but there are times that during that long period that you see in a chart that shows the market going up, that you could lose 50-55%. If you really look at the history of the market, what you'll see is the evidence of cycles. And the market has historically will show you the market goes through good cycles, and just think about a circle going right to left, clockwise. And you get to the top, and then it goes into a bad cycle. And of course, it depends on, there's some cycles that were really long cycles, there's some cycles that are small cycles. But what it does is it shows you, yeah, this is a great time to be in the market. This is not so great today. I think the risk level is extremely high, and the potential of us going into a bad cycle is greater than the potential of us resuming, we'll say, a good cycle. And there's a lot of reasons why I think that, but the use of cycles and just understanding how they work and that they are there makes you look at the investments a lot differently. And I am running out of time, and so what we'll do is we'll pick up on this next Monday. Yeah, next Monday we can finish up the B5 series, talk a little bit more about that. Tomorrow, Mark Pfeiffer, mortgage consultant, will be on with me, talk about real estate and how the real estate markets are looking. And boy, that's been painful to watch. So we'll be talking about that. In the meantime, if you got a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com, because we are all out of time. We do meet again next time. Keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.